Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our ordinary meeting of council on the 17th of October 2023. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this ordinary council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or make a submission will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of that live stream and recording. The chair and/or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed appropriate. That may include where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The live stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our ordinary meeting of council on the 17th of October. The public is able to view the live stream via our website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the live stream, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum can be maintained, and where possible, a recording of the meeting will be published on the council website. Where a quorum cannot be maintained, the meeting will be adjourned until the issue is resolved, or the meeting postponed to another time and date in accordance with council's governance rules. Please stand for the opening prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wadawurrung, Jar Jar Wurrung, Eastern Maar and Watchabollock tribes whose lands form the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respects to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of these tribes on whose lands we meet today. Councillor Keogh is an apology for this evening's meeting, and we wish her well. Councillors and officers, is there any notices of disclosure of interest? No. None. Thank you. Confirmation of the previous minutes. That the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 19th of September 2023, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. All those in favour? Carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes? None. Thank you. Public participation. Members of the community are encouraged to participate in public ordinary council meetings by asking questions or presenting a submission. This can be done by attending in person or by submitting in writing prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting, online through the council's website, by mail or hand delivered. If a question or submission is submitted in writing, this will be read by the chair during public participation, stating the person's name and township. Question time will be held first, followed by public submissions. 30 minutes is allowed for the total period of public participation. Time extensions may be allowed at the discretion of the chair, subject to the provisions of the governance rules. A person may ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting. The chair will allocate a maximum of 5 minutes to each person who wishes to address council or ask a question. The chair, councillor or council officer to whom the question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for answering at a later date. There will be no discussion or debate with public attendees. However, councillors may ask questions of the attendee for clarification. Are there any questions or submissions from the gallery?
Yes, please.
Trevor.
Councillors, council, I was wondering, we spend a lot of money as a council on logos on our shirts and badges and all these things, and that's fine, that's great. But most of those people are inside. Why do we not have logos on our vehicles that do the works crews and everything else? Because they can be removed once you sell them. That's my first question.
Thank you, Trevor. Mr. Nolan, Mr. Gowan.
I'm happy to respond to that, Mr.
Mr. Nolan.
Look, I thank Mr. Davey for his question. There's no particular reason why we don't have logos on our vehicles. Certainly, we have a limited budget associated with marketing our brand to the community. We are currently considering we have a project that we're working on about marketing, about putting our logo and our name on a number of public buildings, which was identified as a positive thing to build pride in the community about council assets, but they're the static assets, the building assets. There's no particular reason why we haven't put our brand on our vehicles. They do tend to get turned over a bit, and so there's a need to maybe transfer that from one vehicle to another, but that's something we can investigate. Happy to investigate that a bit further.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Nolan.
find it very important because the community, even through flooding and fire problems and all of them, if they see the council trucks out there, then there's a fantastic opportunity for the council to give more positive feedback rather than they go, is the council out here anywhere? I think it's, anyway, that's fine. My second question is, again, vehicles. Why have we got an extremely low number of four-wheel drives in a shire that suffers from such incredible flooding and issues and roads that get damaged, and those vehicles too just can't access that? So that was my second question.
Thank you, Mr. David.
I'm happy to answer that one as well, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Thank
Nolan.
you. Look, each time a vehicle is required for whatever purpose, and there's lots of different reasons why we have vehicles. The people that use those vehicles to deliver the services are engaged and consulted in the decision around the type of vehicle that might be best fit for purpose. And we do have a small number of four-wheel drives, and we tend to utilise those, where we can. But they're reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, I realise we're not allowed to ask 3 questions. I have a very tiny last question, if that's possible.
Certainly, Mr. David, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your confidence in me giving a good question, hopefully. I'm going back to a question where Mr. Nolan and Mr. Gowns may primarily want to run and jump in the river. It's about being an RV-friendly town, and we're constantly trying to build this up, and I love this. This is really good. Where is the approach sign on the highway to say you're in Pyrenees, when last week alone I had 3 wondering where that approach sign would be. That was taken away, I think, when the freeway was done or something. I'm not quite sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for the...
Thank you, Mr. Davey.
I'd like to
Mr. Gowan.
Thank you, Mr. Davies, for your question, which relates to some prior questions from previous years. So this particular issue has been raised with Vic Roads, and there's two issues at hand here. One is that Vic Roads are becoming less likely to provide permission for us to put signage on the Vic Roads highway, even though there may have been previous signage there. So that's one of the issues that we have raised the issue with Vic Roads through the Department of Transport. And the second one is that council over the last few years has been undertaking internally, and it relates to your first question, some branding reviews, and those branding reviews have sat with different individuals over the past few years. And they're being revisited around what the Shire branding should be and where that entry signage should be. Because as you're aware, you did mention the Western Highway entrance to Pyrenees. There are a number of other locations where signs are in a poor state of repair. So it's not just the one sign. Ultimately, with branding, it's about making sure that brand is consistent and relevant. So there's actually quite a bit of a bigger project to be done here. But take your issue on board, and it's definitely something that we're working towards an improvement on.
Appreciate your response. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. And Mr. Davey, it's not the only issue. We have trouble with highways. We don't necessarily control them in any way, shape or form. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
So item 10, corporate community services, customer action requests. Ms. Bramwell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the regular monthly report on contact made with our community by council officers, and I'll take the report as read. And the recommendation is that the council accepts it.
Happy to move to that effect, Mr.
Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? I just wanted to comment that looking at where we were during the flood situation nearly 12 months ago as to where we are now, it's tapered out significantly, fortunately.
Yep.
We have a recommendation, councillor. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor activity reports and assemblies of councillors. Well, no, we'll do the activity reports first. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion? No. All those in favour? Carried. Assembly of councillors, the meeting briefing on 12th of September. And the council meeting on the 19th. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Clark. All those in favour? Carried. Item 13, economic development and tourism, Beaufort Caravan Park fees and charges. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council would recall that at the beginning of 2022, there was an operational review undertaken. Council engaged an external party to undertake this operational review, and that subsequently led to a master plan being prepared for the Beaufort Caravan Park. Since then, Council has secured $500,000 in funding and committed $500,000 towards an upgrade of the caravan park, and a further funding application of $1 million has been made to the Commonwealth, of which we're yet to hear the outcome of that application. That will enable Council to undertake first two stages of development of the caravan park, leaving a third stage, which is at this stage unfunded. The purpose of this report is essentially to seek Council's direction in respect of the fees and charges of the caravan park. Now, when that operational review was undertaken, there was a recommendation that Council reviewed fees and charges associated with the development. There's been some consideration given to that, and essentially to take into account some seasonal variations, because we have peak periods and quiet periods, and there was a suggestion from the external party engaged that Council look to have some different fees during those peak periods. The report, however, recommends that Council consider retaining the fees as they are at present, And the main reasons for doing so is because the infrastructure is tight, and the visitor experience is not necessarily what visitors would expect at a similar facility, based on comparisons that have been done in other like caravan parks. So this is not a surprise to councillors. Councillors have been and seen the facilities. It's part of the reason why we're actually seeking an upgrade is because the amenities are not meeting current standards, and there are some maintenance issues associated with internal roadwork. So we're hopeful and expecting that the funding will be successful, and that the upgrade that's proposed for the caravan park will take this to a much higher standard of experience for our visitors, and we'll be able to market that as well as a prized destination for visitors into the future. Until such time as the upgrade is undertaken, the recommendation, councillors, is that council not make any seasonal adjustments to the fees and charges to the caravan park at this time, but rather consider doing so as part of the 24-25 budget process. Continues to pursue avenues of funding for the delivery of the full master plan. Undertakes any necessary remedial maintenance work at the park to maintain customer experience. So not just wait until the upgrade is done, but do some low-cost immediate works that may be appropriate. To examine solutions to improve the internal road as an interim measure until the full master plan is updated. So where there's some repairs that could be justified, to look to just investigate those and to cost them out and bring those then forward for consideration at the next budget, and seek quotations for this work along with other works to improve the existing amenities block in as an interim measure, and then gives consideration to funding these further works at the mid-year budget review. So in summary, councillors, it's really about it's about, the long game is about seeking funding to complete the master plan. That's the long game to raise the profile of the caravan park. Until we actually get to that point, we do some remedial maintenance where it's cost effective to do so, and we just investigate further some other works that might be necessary or appropriate as an interim measure, where it's cost effective, and the decision on those would be brought to the next budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Moved to Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow on from the CEO's comment and recognise that the infrastructure is a little bit tired. And that's, I think, a reality for us at the moment. I think it's really important that we do get the caravan park developed, that we continue to pursue funds for that new master, for the whole of the master plan, and move to, I think, what's adequate to something that is much more optimal, because there's going to be plenty of demand for the caravan park in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Okay. All those in favour? Carried. Regional tourism update, Mr. Nolan.
Mr. Mayor, this is effectively an update of the Visitor Economy Partnership, which has now commenced, with council being a partner with the shires of the city of Ballarat, Moorabool, Hepburn, and parts of Hepburn and Golden Plains. A chair has been appointed, John Pandazopoulos, as the independent chair, which John has a wealth of experience in the tourism sector. And 5 industry-based board members have been democratically elected by the industry to represent them on the board. The CEOs of the participating councils are also members of the board. The board has had its first meeting in September, and a copy of a quarterly report is also attached to this report. Importantly, one of the first projects of this group is to prepare a destination management plan. Consultants have been engaged, and those consultants who are preparing this destination management plan have presented to council in brief, and will be looking to continue to engage with industry representatives until a draft is prepared and brought to the board. At this point in time, Mr Mayor, the purpose of bringing this report as an update to council is because when council resolved to participate in the partnership, council sought that a further report be provided to council as to the allocation of funds, and so this is about sort of keeping council informed about the directions the board's taking, so that council can assess whether they're receiving value for money for the membership that council pays to be part of this partnership. At this point in time, Mr Mayor, it's still very early days, but the board is active, it's enthusiastic. The organisation is actually delivering at this point in time, and there's some excitement around the fact that there's a destination management plan, which will be a really good document to be able to provide evidence to support future investment in tourism in our region. And so the purpose of the recommendation, Mr Mayor, is that council notes the report and the activities of TMV, and that council looks to share the draft destination management plan once prepared and available for release by TMV with Pyrenees tourism operators and with the general community for their information and comment.
Thank you, Mr Nolan. We have a recommendation, councillors. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Clark? No. All those in favour? Okay. Economic development update, Mr Nolan.
So, councillors, the report is there for some really interesting reading into our current state of the economy as far as Pyrenees is concerned. And I won't talk in detail to all the elements in there, but essentially it's about providing an update to councillors about two things. One, the activities that council's involved in terms of implementing our economic development plan, and two, providing an update on the state of the economy, particularly in respect of the agricultural sector. We've just heard about the tourism activity from the point of view of the other key propulsive sectors. As far as our economic development strategy is concerned, a number of things that council placed as high importance in terms of supporting the economy, certainly in respect of its road network. Council invests heavily in its road network. Council received a report last month about the opening up of heavy vehicle approved routes for agricultural products to be able to get to and from market. The security of a reliable water supply, telecommunications coverage have been areas of activity from council, and council, as part of its adoption of its 23-24 budget, adjusted the rating differentials in respect of the agricultural sector. And those aspects that I've just named there, relevant to the ag sector, is also relevant when you consider the part of the rest of the report which deals with commodity prices and the current state of play as far as the ag sector is concerned. The graphs that are in the report will show that there has been a significant downward trend in respect of the price for sheep, lambs and wool. And those graphs are taken from the ABARES report, which is an independent report that provides reliable evidence on the sector. In terms of the livestock farm monitoring project, there are also some significant statistics there for council's consideration. The other elements of the report talk about other key propulsive sectors, the timber industry, the forestry transition program is relevant to the state decision associated with the decision to cease logging from native forests in Victoria. And whilst there is a transition program in place there for those affected businesses, there's reference also there to the Forestry Transition Fund, which is actually not eligible for Pyrenees Shire communities. The other recent economic development activities, there's reference there to some really significant work the council's doing to build our economy. The Southern Wimmera and North East Pyrenees water supply project is one that there's a significant amount of effort and resource gone into looking to build a business case and a feasibility study associated with that, and pleased to see the significant attendance at the information session at Natty Alec just earlier this month. And that's really about providing work to secure funding, to look to secure funding to provide a secure water supply for those communities in the northern part of the Shire. The Beaufort Linear Master Plan is about future planning for the future of Beaufort. Beaufort Lake Caravan Park development is what I sort of spoke to recently, which is really about improving that asset for visitation and for worker accommodation into the future. The digital marketing project, has been one that we've invested time and effort into, providing one-on-one assistance to local businesses around digital marketing. The shop facade program is one that council is currently investing in terms of providing funds to encourage businesses to improve their facades in the main street. Tourism, we've talked about those activities in the previous report. And so, Mr. Mayor, they're just some of the key activities that are occurring currently in respect of our economic development unit. And the recommendation, councillors, is that council notes the report, continues to invest in infrastructure projects that support the productivity of the farm sector and provide broader community benefits. And the council receives a further report on the Beaufort Linear Master Plan at the December council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Noel. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank the staff for the in-depth report. A couple of indications there that come as no surprise to me, but being a farmer and a producer of livestock, it just indicates life on the land. I guess we have our rises and we have our falls, and at this stage of the piece, we've seen major fall in the price of livestock in the marketplace. Haven't seen it in the supermarket yet. I'm just wondering how long it's going to take them to catch up that we as farmers have taken a massive dive in the price of livestock.
But the middleman still needs to make his stop.
Yeah, well, he's certainly got his opportunity to make it at the moment, but he's got to realise that eventually it's going to come back to bite him if he keeps at it. I would also recommend the water supply coming in from Wimmera Water. It's gaining support all the time from those farmers that are lucky enough to be involved on the route where the water is coming from Lake Belfield and it's going to find its way out to Navarre and around to Natty Alec and around the range to Amphitheatre. It's gathering massive support, which is good because it guarantees that when we go to government, we've got support in the project. And I would still appeal to people that are, if they go and get informed as to where the pipeline's going to go, and if you are in any ways interested, make sure that it costs you nothing to express the fact that you are interested at this stage. There will be a cost involved when it comes time to connect the water, but it will be money well invested, believe me, and it'll be a great asset to our viticulture industry in the Pyrenees Shire as well. The tourism has we all know is very important with Pyrenees Shire. I just relate a very interesting situation I found myself in last Wednesday. I took the train from Ballarat to Melbourne. There were 4 women from Melbourne who'd come up to Ballarat to spend the day looking around the city of Ballarat and doing some shopping, as they do. They were all bona fide city dwellers, that is for sure. But they were aware of the Pyrenees wines and how good they were, and Avoca and Murnabel. So that was pleasing to me. They couldn't understand why the turbines weren't turning out at Lel when it was so windy, but that is understandable. I guess they come from the city and they don't realise the capacity is not there in the power lines at this stage to transfer that generated power back to Melbourne. But it was an interesting discussion along the way, I can assure you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just add a couple of comments to Councillor Vance's. It's a very interesting time in agriculture at the moment with global markets, particularly affecting grain. I mean, the grain prices are still very high, but domestic market very much affecting livestock. And I remember a situation back in 1974 when we were getting $600 a head for cows and how good it was. And next year we were getting 100. But it's not a surprise, it happens. It's just how the world works. But certainly support the range of initiatives here. But Mr. CEO, I've just got one question, if you could take it on notice, please. I've heard a couple of things about the East Grampians pipeline not quite achieving perhaps some of its earlier things. Could we please just check with Grampians Mallee Wimmera Water just to get an update for us on how that project's progressing, please, and just to share it with the councillors offline. It's not urgent, but I think it'd be interesting just to hear. I've just heard a couple of comments from landholders about the project over the last couple of weeks. That's all, thanks.
Yeah, happy to take.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillors, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Asset and Development Services, bridge load limit signage. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks the council's support for the installation of bridge load limit signage on council bridges. This signage will help inform the travelling public of the current bridge load limits to protect these bridges from failure. The Bridge Design Australian Standard includes a process on how to evaluate existing bridges to determine their capacity and determine if a bridge load limit is required. This structural assessment has been completed on between 10 and 20 bridges over the past 3 to 5 years within the Pyrenees Shire by independent structural engineering consultants. Along with these structural assessments, regular level 2 bridge condition assessments are completed every 4 years and routine yearly level 1 inspections are completed. These assessments have helped determine the current load limited bridges within the Shire. There are about 150 road bridges within the Shire, and 100 of these are over 50 years old. The older bridges were designed to about a 33-tonne semi-truck. However, the current bridge design loading is the SM 1600, which includes loading of over 145 tonnes. The SM 1600 design loading is calculated with an extreme potential load and currently is one of the highest in the world, with most of the Victorian road bridge network limited to 68.5 tonnes, which is a PBS vehicle to which is a B double vehicle classification. There are some arterial roads that are approved for larger A double and B triple heavy vehicles, which are up to 90.5 tonnes. Some existing older bridges upgraded, depending on a cost-benefit assessment, might only achieve 60 to 90% of the SM 1600 design load. For example, 70% of the SM 1600 design load could be equivalent to an A double truck. A list of bridges to include the new load signage is attached to this report. There are several bridges that require additional assessment to determine if a load limit is required, and these have currently not been identified as requiring load limit signage at this stage. The proposed signage at each of the load limited bridges will include a load limit sign on each side of the bridge and may include advanced or intersection signs to warn drivers of the upcoming bridge load limit. Installing these signs will reduce the risk of heavy vehicles travelling over bridges which are not suited to heavy vehicles due to their design or current condition. It will also help protect these bridges from premature failure. Bridges are a key component within Pyrenees Shire Council's road network and provide access to key industries and businesses. The installation of bridge load limit signage will inform the public of travel and load limit requirements and help to protect bridges to ensure that the failure or additional condition degradation is mitigated. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that Council supports the installation of bridge load limit signage on Council's current load limited bridges. The Council supports the authorised Council road managers within the Assets and Development Services Department to make future changes to bridge load limits, including signage as required. The Council continues to seek avenues for funding for necessary bridge upgrades, and that Council continues to engage with key industries and business on the matter to assist with transport access needs.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Moved, councillors Vance, councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If this is what it takes to protect our bridges, this is what's got to happen. It's as simple as that. We've seen during briefing today a photo of a vehicle that went through a bridge. It was over. Well, I don't say that the vehicle might not well have been overloaded, but it went through the bridge and it's written off the vehicle and the trailer behind it. So we don't want any of those sort of accidents. It may well not be popular with the heavy vehicles that travel our roads at the moment, but they have got to understand that we've got to protect our assets also. So I'm more than happy to move this motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Vance. No. Mr. Gowans, having just done some of my maths, I do have a question. The SM 1600 design loadings to 145 tonne, whereas an A double can be 94 tonne. If we've got two A doubles going across a bridge, have we got a problem?
Probably not. And the reason why I say that is because the loading is for any point in the bridge, and at any point of the truck, it's unlikely two A doubles are going to be taking up one span of any bridge in our Shire. In fact, there is no bridge in our Shire that has a span of two A doubles. So I can hand on heart absolutely confirm that. So in reality, we would never have two A doubles on one span of any bridge at one time within our Shire, because we don't have any bridge spans of that length.
Thank you. Just wondering if anybody else was doing their math like I was. Councillor Clark?
Oh, just a couple of comments, mate. And thank you for that last question, Mr. Mayor. And the theory would be with grain trucks that if two of them are crossing opposite directions, hopefully one's empty.
One's empty.
Yeah, that's the other part on our side. In that sense of things, I think I've also been doing my maths, and most of these bridges are on our sealed road network, which is about 800 kilometres. So put a few on our gravel network. It's about a bridge every 8 kilometres, 8 to 9 kilometres. So it's actually a hell of a lot of bridges for us to deal with as council. And I think to kind of get a sense of how things have moved, half of those bridges are 50 years old when they were built for a 30-tonne semi. And then after that, we've upgraded to kind of a 50 or 60 tonne bridge for a 40 tonne semi or a B double. And now we're building them for 150 tonnes. But that's how the sort of move. But we don't have many 150 tonne bridges, and we need a few more in the Shire. Just a couple of questions, Mr. Gowans, just to confirm. What we're talking about in this report is signage, not load limits. Those load limits have already been in place for quite a period of time, haven't they?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. So in terms of a vehicle that would be seeking a National Heavy Vehicle Permit to use our roads on non-pre-approved roads, those limits already apply. We already apply them in our permit conditions. So heavy vehicle operators won't find any difference. All they'll see is the signage on the bridges.
Yeah, thank you. And one more before you sit down. save you the trouble. We don't have these bridges conveniently located at the start of key roads, and I noticed most of them are on our link roads. What consideration has council officers given, apart from signage on the bridges, to actually any signage on the actual routes, please?
Yes, so there's a couple of considerations that council officers have considered. Where we've got load limited bridges on key link roads, we've tried not to be too conservative so that we understand how important those routes are for heavy vehicles. And so we've got 3 load limits that we're applying across the Shire. And there's one bridge in the Shire that can only take a load of 15 tonnes. The majority of load limited bridges will be 30-tonne bridges. However, some of the key bridges on link roads will be 45-tonne. Which still allows for reasonably heavy vehicles, and we'll always work with transport operators to look at alternate routes that we can work to. Now, there was a second part to your question. Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Just about the signage.
Oh, the signage, yes. And on those key routes, where there is a load limit, we will be putting advanced signage to ensure that trucks, especially large trucks, don't get to a bridge and then struggle to have an area where they can turn around. So we want to ensure that the travelling public, especially those in heavy vehicles, are made aware a long way prior to coming to a load limited bridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. We have a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Carried. Circular Economy Act implications. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of the Circular Economy Act 2021, and Council's obligations to meet the requirements of this Act. Local government has the responsibility to support the recycling and resource recovery targets introduced by the Victorian Government in 2019 as part of the state's circular economy policy. In a report presented at the August 2023 Council meeting, Council was advised of the Circular Economy Act 2021 now being in place. The Act provides for stronger regulation of the state's waste and recycling sector for more and better recycling, less waste and less landfill. The Act provides for Victoria's transition to a sustainable circular economy, including enabling laws for the new container deposit scheme and statewide 4-bin household waste and recycling system with mandatory provisions for local government. The Act also established the new Recycling Victoria entity, a dedicated government business unit to oversee and provide strategic leadership for waste and recycling sector. Recycling Victoria's plan includes the development of regulations and service standards that will determine how services are to be delivered by councils. The provisions that are in development are likely to influence future service standards, including for food and organic waste stream, which has the potential to impact the cost of service for residents within the Pyrenees. Led by the City of Ballarat, Council is working with a regional group of councils to form the Ballarat Region Circular Economy Materials Procurement Group. The procurement group is seeking circular economy focused solutions for the material streams they manage, including the processing of organics and recyclables, and processing of residual waste. The Victorian State Government has set broad targets that include diversion of 80% of waste from landfill by 2030, with an interim target of 72% by 2025, cut total waste generation by 15% per capita by 2030, phase out problematic and unnecessary plastics by 2025, and ensure every Victorian household has access to separate food and organic waste recycling services or local composting by 2030. Council has entered a memorandum of understanding with the City of Ballarat to provide an opportunity to progress discussions in relation to waste and resource recovery ambitions and the role that identified solutions can play in achieving those ambitions. The MOU also provides industry with a level of confidence that participants are committed to exploring emergent circular economy waste processing solutions. One of the issues that Pyrenees Council will need to balance is transport costs associated with regional processing to provide a best value outcome for the Pyrenees community. Council may need to consider processing green organic waste locally. Council officers are working and closely monitoring neighbouring councils who have introduced anaerobic or aerobic methodologies for managing food and organic green waste. Waste and recycling are key activities that Council has responsibility for in the collection and appropriate processing of materials in order to reduce the amount of materials taken to landfill. This is best done through collaboration with other local government associations and through market solutions. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that Council continues to collaborate with regional partners to explore market options for recycling and waste options, and that Council undertake information deliberative engagement activities to inform residents of future changes to waste and recycling streams that will likely have an increase in cost to current charges.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. We have a recommendation, councillors. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Clark, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fully support the recommendation and the work to be done. Just one question, Mr. Gowans. Just it sounds like we as council are going to have to start making some decisions on this stuff again fairly soon. Not like, although we've made some big decisions in the last 2 years, we've probably got some more decisions coming within the next 12 or 18 months, please. Could you just give us some advice?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Clark, for your question. That is correct. We really will need to have a clear strategic plan of what we're implementing when. We did have to indicate in an early plan to the state government about when we might introduce food and green organics. And that was to align with our next waste contract. And I think that's a couple of years away, but obviously the work to develop that next contract needs to be done. There's also other factors in our waste streams that we'll need to consider. Things like, is some of the practices of allowing various forms of waste going to our transfer stations to residents at no cost actually increasing the amount of material that's going to landfill? These are things that council need to grapple with over time, and I think part of that deliberative engagement will help assist and educate the community to be part of the solution for how the system goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, no further discussion. All those in favour? Carried. Preferred supplier, grass slashing and weed control. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide information to Council on tenders received for contract C2223-015, preferred supplier, grass slashing and weed control, and seeks Council's endorsement for these tenders to be included onto the preferred supplier panel. The request for tender for preferred supplier grass slashing and weed control was released to the market through Council's tender platform on the 3rd of August 2023 and was advertised until the 30th of August 2023. The tender was viewed 73 times online with 18 companies downloading the tender documents. There were 7 companies that provided a submission. All successful preferred supplier contractors will be required to participate in regular reviews of performance and comply with Council's contractor management system that will maintain certificates, registration and licences for preferred suppliers. The submission for grass slashing and weed control services are listed in the report. And therefore it's the officer recommendation that Council receives the preferred supplier report for contract C2223-015, preferred suppliers for grass slashing and weed control shown in the table, and that Council resolves to appoint the tender as detailed in the table as preferred supplier for grass slashing and weed control services.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors. Moved, councillor Clark, seconded, councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Planning and development update. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report generally is for noting. However, it's been prepared to provide council with a summary of activities within the Planning and Development Department for July, August, September this year. It contains 4 components, including planning, planning permit data, planning team resourcing, VCAT issues, public open space contributions, strategic planning program, information relating to the building department, including swimming pool compliance, environmental health, including wastewater and public health, tobacco test purchasing, routine inspections, complaints, DWP inspections, and a section on community safety and amenity, including animal activity, including registrations, impoundments, and the like, and also activities relating to other infringements. There was also some issues in the report relating to some particular issues relating to redback cats, a Gort splits, a Lexington dog establishment issue, and the upcoming fire season. I'll take it the report as read, and it's the officer's recommendation that council notes are the contents of this report, and that council officers prepare a policy relating to public open space contributions for future council consideration.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillor, recommendation before us. Moved.
Happy to move.
Councillor Vance, seconded. Councillor Clark. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report certainly makes for some interesting reading. I didn't realise there were so many cats so close to home in Redbank. Yeah, it's a good, solid report on council's obligations and things that go on behind the scenes that the general public probably don't even realise happen. So I'm more than happy to move the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. No, it's a shame that we had one resident with 135 cats. It really hits your numbers when that's found within your boundaries, but you can't do a lot about it with cats. They're a very prolific breeding group. Councillors, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Corporate and Community Services Annual Report 2023. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to the Council the annual report for 2023. The annual report is required under the Local Government Act 2020 to be presented to Council within 4 months of the end of the financial year, which is the end of October. This year's report includes information on projects, the organisation, and continues last year's focus on sharing images and stories from staff. The Council delivers more than 150 services, from family and children's services, open space, waste management and community facilities, to matters concerning business support and development, planning for appropriate development, and ensuring accountability for Council's budget and financial sustainability. The delivery of services, facilities, support and advocacy to achieve those strategic objectives is measured by a set of performance indicators and reported against in the annual report. The year saw some economic challenges arising from the significant and widespread flood event in late 2022, with the recovery work still underway and likely to continue for at least another year. Council delivered a large programme of major capital works, including a new community facility in Lexington, recreation upgrades in Beaufort with the installation of new cricket nets, and many infrastructure upgrades, including bridges, roads, footpaths and drainage works. In the year, I did identify some ongoing challenge, improving our community's satisfaction with council performance and long-term financial sustainability pressures, as well as managing the morale of the organisation with a large proportion of staff sadly leaving us following the exit from direct delivery of home-based care services. And COVID continued to remain an ongoing presence, with positive cases within the workforce being experienced regularly throughout the year. The financial year ended with a positive financial result and an unqualified financial audit. A digital proof copy of the annual report is provided to council by separate circulation. Final copies will be provided when printed, and the report will be made available on the website, and printed copies at front counters or available on request. And it's the officer recommendation that council receives the formal presentation of the Pyrenees Shire Council Annual Report 2023 and requires officers to make the report available on council's website and, when available, in hard copy to the community upon request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? Thank you very much, Ms Bramwell. All those in favour? Carried. Audit and Risk Committee, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council and the community with an update on the meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee, which was held on Tuesday, 26th of September, and to seek approval of a revised committee charter and a new internal audit programme, as recommended by the committee. Following, a meeting was held on Tuesday, 26th of September, and a summary of the discussions is included in the body of the report. Following the meeting, arrangements were made for the end of financial year financial statements and other documents to be signed as agreed by council at their meeting in September. And minutes of the 26th September Audit and Risk Committee were going to be circulated to members of the committee. They've just been retained temporarily because we need to check something from a privacy perspective, then we'll circulate them to councillors. The chair of the Audit and Risk Committee also submitted their biannual report for council information, and a copy of that was provided to council under separate cover. AFS and Associates were reappointed as at the 1st of July as council's internal audit provider, and the former internal audit programme was reported as successfully concluded in the first part of this calendar year. And AFS and management of council developed a new programme for the next 3 years, which was discussed at the recent meeting of the committee. Committee members requested that an additional audit be included in the programme regarding business continuity and disaster recovery planning. The draft internal audit programme has been attached to this report for council's consideration, and council's adoption of this programme, with the addition of the additional review of business continuity and disaster recovery planning, is now requested. It's planned that the additional review will take place in 2024. At the September meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee, a weakness in the Audit and Risk Committee charter was identified relating to the non-flexibility of tenure terms for independent members, which meant that in this particular case, over the next 12 months, we're going to have all 3 independent members finishing their tenure within a few months of each other, which doesn't lead to good continuity of an experienced team committee. So the charter has been changed so that the tenure of independent committee members is retained as a preference for 3-year terms, but an option for less than a 3-year term could be considered upon request, and that the initial term of a new independent committee member was mandated at 3 years. Previously, it wasn't mandated, and council is now requested to adopt the revised charter as recommended by the committee. And it's the officer's recommendation that council Notes the information provided on matters discussed at the recent meeting of the Council's Audit and Risk Committee, receives the biannual report from the committee chair, and accepts the recommendation of the Audit and Risk Committee to adopt the draft internal audit programme for the next 3 years, with the inclusion of an additional review as detailed in the report, and adopt the revised Audit and Risk Committee Charter 2023-25. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Moved councillor Vance, seconded councillor Ferrari. Councillor Vance, any discussion?
Well, only to reaffirm the importance of having continuity with the independent members of the charter or the committee. It just didn't make sense for all members, if they chose not to renominate, to be all going at the same time and bringing in a whole new independent group. So that's why it was changed, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
Oh, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, fully support the recommendations and thank you to those people who are our independent audit committee members. It's very important. Mr Bramwell, I noted the context of the audit actually moving to completely remote this time around in terms of the external audit. I think that's interesting in terms of getting a feel for the organisation, that you actually get that by not actually being in the organisation at any point in time.
That's for you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Clark. That was brought up at the committee, and the external auditor did indicate that they had quoted for an external for a remote audit, and the journey. They're located in Albury-Wodonga, and the journey was fairly lengthy for a short in-house audit. We did indicate to them that we would prefer to have some in-house component of audits in future years, particularly at the first part of the audit, in the interim audit in April, May. It would really help with shortening the length of the audit and being able to respond more quickly to requests that they make. And I understand that the Audit and Risk Committee Chair has written to Vago asking for that to be considered for future years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so far from Albury to Avoca. Having just driven across the Nullarbor, I don't know what their problem is. Councillors, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Delegations, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is provided for the Council to adopt revised delegations to Council officers. We generally do a full review of delegations annually, but we do have a requirement to review delegations specifically when officer changes occur. Council operates its environmental health operations through a contract arrangement, which provides the organisation and its community with a consistent approach to mandatory environmental health services and public health protections without interruption when staff or officers change. And to maintain this service, new officers occasionally work for the council, requiring changes to the instruments of delegation and authorisation. A new officer has been assigned to the Pyrenees Shire Council as environmental health officer, and requires the appropriate delegations and authorisation from the council to operate fully. A relevant instrument of delegation and authorisation is attached for council's consideration and adoption. Following adoption, the document will be sealed with council seal. And it is the officer's recommendation that council, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 11 of the Local Government Act 2020 and other legislation referenced in the attached instrument, resolves that the officer referenced in the instrument be appointed and authorised as set out in the instruments, and that the instruments come into force immediately the common seal of council is fixed to the instrument and remains in force until council determines to vary or revoke it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, we have a move, Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Clark. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Chief Executive Office, Membership, Central Victorian Greenhouse Alliance. Mr. Nolan.
Mr. Mayor, as was foreshadowed previous council meeting, council is in the process of reviewing a number of memberships that it holds with various associations and alliances. And so tonight there are a number of these present to council to consider. Council has been in the process of hearing from representatives from each of those associations and with a view to getting a better understanding about what those membership benefits are and to be in a position to be able to make some decisions about whether or not to continue membership and whether that membership represents value for money. So, Mr. Mayor, without actually speaking to the merits of each of these in any detail, there is a report there. There has been presentations on each of these to councillors to consider. The first of these is the Central Victorian Greenhouse Alliance, and we had the CEO from the Alliance speak to council and outline a number of benefits associated with this in terms of council's ability to deliver on actions within its council plan around the environment and around our long-term future. One of those key projects that's been delivered by CVGA has been the Victorian Energy Collaboration Project. This was a power purchase agreement which effectively produced a collective savings of 172,000 tonnes of CO2 and $2 million in savings for the member councils. Significant amount of financial savings to councils and significant environmental savings as being part of that collaboration. That was really only possible because the greenhouse alliances across the state came together, collaborated, got parties together, worked up a project and actually delivered it. And we're now purchasing our power through Red Energy, and Red Energy are gathering their power through 2 significant wind farms within the state. So that alone is, demonstrates the benefit of being part of this alliance. Apart from the whole range of other projects that are on their program, which includes things like the EV charging program and a number of others in terms of that have resulted in energy efficiency measures being implemented in buildings and opportunities for businesses and the community to get on board with other programs to make their businesses and households sustainable. So, Mr. Mayor, I recommend that this is a good one to retain membership with because of the expertise and the opportunities that will flow, because of the targets that government have set in respect of emissions targets and the need for us to continue to show leadership in this area. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to endorse Council's ongoing participation with the Central Victorian Greenhouse Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors?
Only a brief one. For the amount of cost to be in the membership and the amount that we're receiving, cheaper power alone, there's got to be a sensible sort of an investment, I would have thought.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. All those in favour? Carried. Next one, Committee for Ballarat, Mr. Nolan.
Again, Mr. Mayor, the Committee of Ballarat has been an association the council have had for many years, in the order of 10 years. The committee shows a leadership for not just Ballarat, but Ballarat and the region. And our neighbouring councils, so the neighbouring councils surrounding Ballarat are members of this committee and have previously seen benefit in the work of the committee. The two main areas that this committee focuses on is about leadership and advocacy. Advocacy to government, of course, to highlight the benefits of the region, the needs of the region. Significant issues that the Committee for Ballarat has high on its agenda are housing, transport, employment, energy and population growth, and they're all issues that are relevant to Pyrenees Shire and Pyrenees community. Mr Mayor, there is a membership fee of around $4,300 approximately each year. And apart from that advocacy and leadership which is provided, and just in respect of the leadership, Pyrenees actually have participated in that leadership program quite significantly over the 10 years that I'm aware. There's been some changes in more recent years, but in the past, we've certainly received value through that program. But Mr Mayor, this is one for Council's consideration. There is a recommendation that Council endorse participation with this committee. It is something obviously that does provide some benefit. These membership reports are presented to Council in the context of the fact that Council actually has tight financial constraints to consider. And of course, it is a matter for Council to determine whether it wishes to continue with this membership.
Thank you, Mr Nolan. Councillors. Councillor Clark, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Ferrari. No discussion, councillors. All those in favour? Carried. Mr Nolan, Sunraysia Highway.
So the Sunraysia Highway Improvement Committee is the next one on the agenda, and this is a committee of that represents the councils on the Sunraysia Highway, and is the committee's meetings are also attended by representatives from the Department of Transport and Planning. It has been an opportunity for council to highlight the importance of the Sunraysia as a key strategic transport route within our Shire, and focus attention on advocating to government for investment in improving and maintaining this asset. At this point in time, the membership with SHIC is for approximately $2,000, and that's in part to provide secretariat for the work that the group does, and in part to put towards projects. The report here does outline some of the commitments that have been made over recent years in respect of improvements on the Sunraysia, and they include, the road resurfacing, the widening and edge treatment there between Lillicare and Lamplowre, and some other intersection treatments which are on the agenda with the group at the moment. There are some plans for overtaking lanes in Avoca and between Avoca and St Arnaud, between Avoca and St Arnaud and south of Lexington. These are yet to be brought to fruition, and there are still reasons for council to continue to advocate for improvement in Sunraysia. We don't have a committee for the Pyrenees Highway, and there's no committee for the Glenelg Highway. There is a committee for the Western Highway, which council has previously endorsed. So again, this is one that the recommendation is that council considers the merits of this and make your decision and determination as to whether or not to continue membership. I think it's one for council to determine.
Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a move? Move, Councillor Clark. Seconded, Councillor Ferrari.
You've got to determine what he's moving.
Yes. Councillor Clark.
Moving the recommendation.
Moving the recommendation.
But if the recommendation is that council consider the costs and determine whether it should continue. So I'm just suggesting that council consider and make a determination. So it's just up to yourselves as to whether or not you want to be in it or whether you don't, essentially.
Well, my read of the recommendation, Mr. Nolan, is that we actually don't have to make that decision until we ask them to consider the costs. That was my read of the recommendation. Ask them to consider whether we need to actually charge membership fee for the next couple of years, for example, because they've got money in the bank. So if they come back and say, no, we don't need to do that, I think we can then make a decision. But that was how I read the recommendation. Is it, we can take it as two steps?
It might lend itself to interpretation and some clearer direction.
So I'm happy to then move that we leave this as it is, and that council continue its membership.
Okay. Thank you, councillor Clark. Are you willing to second that, councillor Ferrari? Any further discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Those against? Carried. Timber Towns, Victoria, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be a bit clearer with my recommendation on this occasion. So, Mr. Mayor, Timber Towns Victoria is one that this council has been involved in for a number of years. The association was formed in the early 1980s, and essentially it was deemed important to have a representative group of councils that represent the interests of those councils where the production of timber and was prominent, and where that was important for those communities, for their local economies, and also where the timber industry was seen to be having significant impacts, either through environmental impacts or through impacts on road and transport. The council has received a presentation from the chair of Timber Towns Victoria recently, which outlined some of the significant advocacy work this group has done over the years. In more recent times, the advocacy to government in respect of the government decision to close harvesting in native forests in Victoria and the impact that that's had on our local economies, and in particular in Pyrenees, where we've had businesses impacted by that decision of the state. And TTV have been really strongly advocating and supporting those communities and getting those messages back to government. The other key thing that TTV actually have done over the years is identified the significant impacts of the industry on the road networks associated with plantation and harvesting, and has produced a timber industry road evaluation study, which basically outlines and provides evidence of that impact in consultation with the industry. So those that are responsible for harvesting in the transport sector, so that there's an opportunity for council to advocate to government for additional funding for the likes of bridges to be upgraded and roads to be upgraded to be able to take the heavy transport. And we had a report tonight, Mr. Mayor, on a number of our bridges that are under standard, and there are a couple of those bridges that actually take timber traffic, or that would take timber traffic if they were upgraded to a higher standard, and there is some potential for that TIES report to be a tool for council to advocate for further funding. It has been used in the past on a limited number of roads, and one in particular has been the Raglan-Elmhurst Road many years ago to seek funding to upgrade that road. So it's been used to our advantage in the past. There are a limited number of roads that are impacted in the Pyrenees, but that has been one of the key tasks of Timber Towns Victoria. Mr. Mayor, Timber Towns Victoria actually has a reasonably healthy bank account, and the membership fees are $2,750. The administration and secretariat role is actually undertaken by Glenelg Shire Council, and it is partly subsidised by the council. And they do a very good job of administering Timber Towns Victoria. There is a recommendation there, councillors, that council continues its membership of Timber Towns Victoria, and be open to any other sort of suggestions by council in respect of the membership fees.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor Clark.
If I could move an alternate, which is The first part is that recommendation, but the second part is that we would request of Timber Towns that they waive the fees for a period of up to 3 years for all the members, not just for Pyrenees. If I could get a seconder.
Happy to second that.
Seconded, councillor Vance, councillor Park.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think timber's still a pretty big chunk of our economy, and if I'm correct, I don't think our timber, because all that timber's on Crown land, they don't pay any rates. So kind of the only way we can get any money back is through things like Timber Towns when they're doing damage to the road. But I think it's important that we do stay in that kind of thing, as timber will be a significant part of our economy. But I take on board CEO's comments that they do have some money in the bank, and that money is normally there for studies and reports and those kind of things. It doesn't look like there's any of those on the horizon for the next year or two at the moment in terms of the strategic work. So there's probably capacity, I think, there for us to request that actually they just waive membership fees for a couple of years and just reduce their bank balance level. So if I get the support of other councillors, we'll do that.
Thank you, councillor Clark. Councillor Vance.
Yeah, just a question of Mr. Gowans, if I could. Apart from Mount Lonark, is there any other timber that travels on our roads from the Greater Green Triangle specifically?
So there's other plantations other than those in the Mount Lonark area. There are some plantations between here and Snake Valley but in terms of timber from the Green Triangle, the only business that I would say actually has a regular business from taking timber from that area, and it really depends on the distribution, is Gippsland treated pine. They do have distribution. I'm not sure if it all comes from Gippsland across to here or some of it comes from the Green Triangle. So, so there is other movements, but I'm not sure it's of significant volumes that would be anything like what the Green Triangle volumes would be.
Thank you.
Councillors, we have an amended recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Membership, Victorian Local Government Association, Mr. Nolan.
So, Mr. Mayor, again, the VLGA is one of the peaks that has the ear of government, and this peak body represents the interests of council. They advocate for, the importance of the role of local government. They work to support and assist councillors to do their job well. They provide resources, information, education, and undertake projects to support good governance and leadership. And they advocate to a sustainable, focused and values-driven organisation. So there's a detailed report that's been provided by the CEO that outlines those benefits, and a number of those are listed in this report. Mr. Mayor, VLGA have in the past provided training for candidates seeking election to be councillors, and that training has seemed to be very successful in the past and been very well delivered and represented value for money for member councils. And given that 2024 is an election year, it's likely that VLGA will be in that space again, and there'll be an opportunity to make use of their services there. And they are a service that they do provide a service that enables councillors to make contact directly with them and seek some advice on governance and other matters relating to the role of councillors. So they do provide a range of services. Whether or not all of those services being taken up by Pyrenees in recent years is, I suppose, another factor to consider here, because they do provide a whole range of services that we have limited capacity to be able to maximise the benefit of our membership, essentially. But that is another factor. But Mr. Mayor, given that the membership is $3,280 and that there are some foreseeable advantages in the not too distant future, it's recommended council endorse participation VLGA.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillors, moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Councillor reports and general business. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like other councillors, attended the briefings and a couple of councillor couples and chats, which the last couple have been quite well. They've had good representations from the community. Also attended the Land Council RSA up the Goldfield Reserve, and there was a big attendance up there. The building was packed, so I'm thinking it probably would have been a couple of hundred people. Councillor Vance and Councillor Clark were there as well, so they saw the attendance there. I also had some meetings with some constituents about a whole range of different things around the town. So that's probably about it for me. Pretty light. That's what Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Ferrari, I attended the Brewster Cuppa and listened to the discussion basically around the Brewster. Get their uptake. We are elected to represent them, so that's one of the important things, is to understand what they feel. Brewster's not a large community, and I thought they were pretty well represented actually at the cuppa that evening. It was quite rewarding. I attended a water meeting hosted by the Wimmera Mallee Water. I believe Pyrenees Shire Council was certainly the host body, but with discussions around the proposal to bring the water into the Natty Alec area and the Moonabel area and amphitheatre around the mountain, which is very interesting as far as I'm concerned. It might be a little bit ambitious to think that it'll get around to Ampy, considering the costs that are involved, but at this stage of the piece, providing the support is provided, Wimmera Mallee Water are prepared to push the issue. They've done a feasibility study already, and they're going back to the government to seek funding to put together a complete proposal, getting a great deal of interest now that the water's coming from Lake Belfield via Navarre, and it will feed back to Landsborough West, I believe, but it'll go through Navarre and up the valley to Barclay and then across the gap at Frenchman's, where they'll place some fairly large tanks that will then feed the water on around to Moonabel and Natty Alec and around to Percy Dale and around the mount to Amphitheatre is the proposal if there's enough interest. But certainly that first two stages to feed, and they'll use Toddington as a backup, I believe, if they can convince the people of Toddington to be prepared to use it as a backup. They're more happy to keep it as a recreational area. Good fishing there at certain times of the year. I had an audit and risk committee meeting and Rural Council's AGM. There was a proposal put up by East Gippsland Shire and supported by South Gippsland Shire that the term of membership of the committee be 2 years rather than 4 years. But that was put to the vote and was defeated. It had to get a 75% support for that to change, and the feel, or the end of the session after the votes, it was 50-50. So had some support, but not a lot, which is understandable because for new councillors, it takes a while to come to grips with what's going on, and the mere fact that you're only there for 2 years and you can be removed and replaced by somebody else doesn't give you that strength, I believe, into the board anyway. So I was quite comfortable. I also attended the Baringi Gadgin discussion No, it wasn't Berengie yet. Yes, it was. Yes,
It was.
Yeah, discussion at Beaufort, which was an interesting evening. The proponent of that proposal that's been put up he came up from Melbourne and faced the music, which was really good, and he got a fair bit of music thrown at him too as the evening went on. But that was a very informative evening, I thought. It certainly helped to remove a few uncertainties, but the group that called the meeting went on to Dunkeld the next evening or a couple of nights later, and I believe that meeting might have been a little bit more heated than what the one was in Beaufort. So that's unfortunate. And I also had a Timbertowns AGM, and I didn't re-nominate for election on the board of Timbertowns. That's my lot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nance. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a few little things. I apologise if I missed Brewster. Did take the family away for a holiday, and that was a really nice thing to do with a growing family who we might not get the chance to do that again fairly soon with as a family. I did attend the National Roads Congress in Canberra early in the month, and that was really interesting. And the Grattan Institute spoke about some research that they're doing on roads and road costing. And I'm not sure whether this sounds familiar to anybody in the room, but if you're a council with low population, with lots of roads, and you don't have a great rate base, you're the most stressed in the state. Or I think you're the most stressed in Australia. It sounds a bit like Pyrenees, but if you think about being out anywhere pretty much in WA outside Perth, or pretty much anywhere in Western New South Wales or Northern or Western Queensland, there's a lot of councils like us in that sense of things. So I understand that that research will be finalised probably about the end of November, and we'll be able to start to use that in our advocacy, which will be really, really helpful in that sense of things. Like the other councillors, I had the chance to speak at the Bringy ones, and there's been one at Warburg, one at Beaufort, and then obviously one at Dunkeld the next week. It is a really interesting situation in the context that this agreement that is the subject of the discussion is not binding on councils. And certainly in my context, I have great faith in our CEO and the team here at council to negotiate council's position in the context of this. And I think the way that we've been able to work with Judge Rung now for about 3 or 4 years is a really good testament to that kind of thing. It still remains a real enigma as to why the state's done this. And although we had one of the state's people there who was the architect of it, he was still unable to answer that question, unfortunately, tonight, as to the value this provides in an agreement between the state and the people when we, the councils, effectively are not a party to it and we're bound by it. But that question is still there to answer in the sense of things. MAV had a state conference last week. I got the chance to spend a few minutes with Minister McBain, who's our federal minister, and discuss things like financial assistance grants, but particularly discuss things like the disaster recovery funding arrangements, which still remain diabolical for councils like us and really are slowing us down in the process of that. And believe me, the minister heard this because she got on the council in 2012. They'd had a flood in 2011 and she got her money in 2017. So she knows how bad the system is, and there is a review underway at the moment, I understand, by the federal minister in the space of that. I think the second one in that sense is a number of councils, including Pyrenees, have also responded to the state flood inquiry. I think it's really important that we put on the record our experience on a range of things that happened to us, most particularly how this process is not helping our community recover. But I think the other probably key one for us, and it's happened to us again in 2022, as it did in 10 and 11, is that the state has a range of obligations that they will fulfil in a flood, provided the flood only hits about 4 councils in the state at one period in time. And effectively, they can't make it to Pyrenees when we have a decent flood like we had last year and we're on our own again. Those are the kind of key things that we need to continue to get that message across to the powers that be, I hope, and hopefully get some change. That's probably all from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Yes, the cuppa at Brewster was very interesting to hear the community's thoughts on various things, but particularly the wind farm. Again, to have the discussion with the wind farm today. As long as everybody's talking and being civil, we're getting on. We're getting some results. We're waiting for the minister. So things are moving. Had the launch of GBAC, which is the regional councils around Ballarat. Federal Minister Catherine King came along and launched the event. We all had a chance to speak to her about our requirements and whatever, housing being one of the main topics we had, and land availability, and had the other briefings and meetings. Also, I attended one of the Baringi Gadgin meetings, the one at Warborough, and had updates on the other two. The thing that troubles me is that our constituents are seeming to be concerned about this matter and are looking to council as the solution. We've had Councillor Clark attend these meetings, and the one I attended, I thought he handled really, really well and got our message across that we are not a participant of this agreement. We're not bound by this agreement, but we will do what we legally need to do to be involved with it for our constituents. I don't believe our constituents are listening to that element of it. They're listening to the hyperbole that is coming from other people, but they are not listening to us, and that troubles me. Those people that are upset, those people that are worried, need to be contacting their state government representatives. They're the people that need to talk to the government about their worries. We will do our legal requirements, and I would expect our constituents to want us to do that. So hopefully going forward, we will get some further information, probably from the state government, and we will be able to allay some fears. Councillor Vance.
I apologise, Mr Mayor. It was remiss of me not to make mention of the fact that we had 3 councillors at the MAV dinner receive service awards, including yourself, 10 years, Councillor Keogh for 10 years, and Councillor Clark for 25 years, which is well and truly worthy of a mention at our meeting tonight. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Yes, I was very pleased to be awarded that, and it recognition of the work that we do put in, but you don't do it for that reason.
Exactly.
Thank you. Lastly, I will not be nominating for the position of mayor at our statutory meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. So this will be my last meeting in the chair. I want to thank all my fellow councillors for their support in my role. And I want to thank all the staff, because without them answering my questions, I can't get answers back to people that ask me. And I use that situation to try and advance Pyrenees Shire wherever possible, even within our own constituency. It's important that our messages get across as best we can, and without the answers coming from staff, I wouldn't be able to do that. So thank you to everyone concerned, and thank you to the people of the Pyrenees Shire. They've always treated me with some regard, some respect, and had some very interesting discussions at times, but they've always been civil and respectful, and you can't ask for more than that. Thank you very much to everybody. Now, pursuant to the provisions of section 4.1.1c of the Council's governance rules and section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will be closed to the public in order to consider confidential items. I have a recommendation here that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with those just mentioned to discuss item 15.1, a land matter for the council. Can I have a mover? Councillor Ferrari, seconded. Councillor Vance, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Trevor. Have a lovely evening.
See ya.